everyone. I'm so excited to have you here on another episode of Right Off Track. And I have a wonderful guest who I'm excited to share with you and the world. He's also a dear friend of mine. Today, we are so fortunate to have Ryan Stoltzfus, who is the founder of Job Hacker Network. And he's equipping engineering and operations leaders with effective personal brands that help them advance their careers, which is a lot. And I'm excited to unpack that with you. But before we jump to it, I've seen you start a career, or actually continue your career at booking.com. You were at HRVP, and ever since then, like obviously our careers have taken different courses, but I wanted to talk about your journey, and maybe we start where did everything get started to get you to this place where Job Hackers Network came to life.
Okay, sounds good. And just like in any good tell me about yourself answer to a question in an interview, I'm not going to go back and tell you my whole story. But I want to take you all through the points that I think are really important to my journey. Yeah. I never thought that I was going to do anything off track. My dad was a mechanical engineer for NASA for 40 years. And so I never saw my journey going off track. But after booking, I moved on into a couple of different jobs, and I went over to ADP for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. And at ADP, I had the unfortunate pleasure of laying a lot of people off, and had to be the one who actually had that conversation with about 300 people. And that is a soul-sucking experience. And that really made me dig deep into a vision of helping ADP to be the best place to get laid off at, to use my skill set to help people once they get that horrible phrase and they have a month or some period of time to be able to network effectively internally and be able to stay within the company that they love. And so I created that internal corporate program. And then about 2 years back, I turned it into the Job Hackers Network to ultimately grow my impact and make it available to individuals as something that they could join.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more about you. The reason I was so excited to have Ryan over is because right now, obviously, layoffs are looming. And I want to get your advice on that, and we'll dive into that in just a moment. But Right Off Track to me was something that I created because I want to understand the why, right? I don't want to say here's what I'm doing and let me share everything where I'm at, but I want to understand what drove you here and some off track moments we were able to dive into. So can we start maybe what was your why, and was there something you became an HRBP, you were finding ways to help people, and there's obviously some root there. Is there anything that caused you to pursue that in your life?
Yeah, my why has layers. I think that we're all kind of an onion, and you unpeel and you find deeper layers. So for me, as regards to specifically the layoff conversation, when I was laying people off, I wanted them to be able to go back to the dinner table, to go back to their family, to be able to sit down at that table and receive that question of how did your day go? And for them to be able to say, well, I got laid off today, but, and then list all of these things that were ultimately where they felt like they were in control and they had a plan and they just had to follow that strategy and that proven process. So that, going even further back, if I can,
love it.
I'm a preacher's kid. And my dad preaches from the pulpit, and I never saw myself doing that. I never tried to do that, but I was always trying to find people that I could serve. I think we all have something inside of us that says, I want to have a greater impact. That's why you grow your P&L, your profit and loss statement. That's why you take those next level jobs. That's why you become a leader, is because you want to impact other people. My dad, at certain points in my career, just because of the background I had, would bring somebody to me and say, hey, can you help this guy that sits in the second row and he's been unemployed for the last 6 months? Can you help him? And I didn't have anything I could give him. And I would unfortunately say, Dad, if I met with him for an hour, we wouldn't get anywhere. I need 8 hours where I can walk him through a process and help him execute something. So I had something inside of me. I had a process inside of me that I had used for myself, that I had used to help myself network for different business development reasons. And I wanted to be able to give it to just that one person. And it actually, the very first person that I built my first version of my program, now I'm on the third version, it was actually my cousin. My cousin was unemployed through a conversation with my dad, I put the program together thinking, hey, if I just help him, then no matter what time I put into this, it's worth it. Because of the conversation he would be able to have and the control he'd be able to have when he's at the dinner table with his family.
That's so awesome. And I love that truism that people think that when you start something, it has to be this defined plan. Like I had it all figured out all along. But to your point, it could be something where you start and you see value and you build it up, right?
Yeah. I think that you have to realize where you're at. There is an area of expertise that needs to be present. There is something that you can do for another human, and you're driving initially towards that. But through market research, through working with those humans, your value becomes even more clear. And I think we always have to have that open mind to say, I didn't realize that that's what you really needed or I could really do for you. As a strengths-based coach, I've come to realize that your strengths, the things that fuel and engage you and light you up, the things that you're the best at, the things where you're showing up in your lane, that work is often easy to us. So we undervalue it because it comes easy. But to somebody else receiving it on the outside, it's exactly what they need. It's something they're not capable of doing. And so those relationships, working with people, it helps us highlight those things. You don't have to have it all figured out at the beginning. You have to have the desire to serve your fellow man, I think, and then dig into your expertise.
Absolutely. And let's dive into that. Let's dive into your work, because I listened to some of your sessions and I was like, okay, I mean, like, Ryan has it all figured out. Like, you sound so confident and you have wisdom, and it's easy to be like, oh yes, I get this. Even from like the things that you put out for free, which I'm so grateful for. I was like, okay, I should be doing X, Y, Z. Like I can improve this strategy. So thank you for that. But can you maybe share a little about what your work is, and like maybe some things that you learned and you're excited to share, and why it's valuable, especially right now?
Well, first off, the fact that you use the word wisdom, like, holy crap, that's awesome. Knowledge is one thing, but to have wisdom, that's in like the practical application, and it goes beyond practical. It involves some deep understanding, and so you definitely have to put in the strokes to have wisdom. So I just want to acknowledge that word being thrown out. That's awesome. I think that a lot of it just comes back to that desire to serve. If people don't know me, my brand, what I can do for them, if they don't see that value, then there's no opportunity for me to serve them at a greater level in the future. So there is definitely something to be said for putting out your knowledge or parts of that packaging in a free setting. Because, I mean, branding these days is everything in business, in life, in advancing in your career, in starting an entrepreneur adventure, being a solopreneur. I mean, everything is about branding.
Absolutely. And can you touch more about maybe common pitfalls that people have? Like, I think the job market is changing. Our approach to what a job should be and how we approach the job search, and kind of our value proposition is changing. And I know you have a lot of things that you share in your course, but can you give us some free pointers or direction around that?
So first off, I want to break this. I'll transition with this, but I want to break it into two sides of things.
Like, let's be clear. Like, that's what I need.
Yeah, I want to break it into the pitfalls that I have seen that people often face when they're starting an entrepreneurial journey. So I want to connect it first to if you're going to go off track, and then connect it in the same kind of answer over into the job market and job seekers. So first off, a couple of years doing this and doing my entrepreneurial journey, I have come to realize there is no easy button. And you can apply this to both sides of things. The people who are doing the entrepreneurial journey and individuals who are going to go out there on the job market. If somebody is selling you an easy button, turn the other way. Turn the other way. And I've probably spent about $30,000. I've had four coaches in my paid coaches in starting my entrepreneurial journey. And I would say that probably 25,000 of that was misspent, but it was money I had to spend to be able to figure out that the work had to be put in very specific areas. So that easy button, I mean, that's definitely a big takeaway. The other thing is branding. I mean, let's transition over to the job seeker. The most important thing that you can do in your job search is get to know yourself. If you don't have the ability to say, this is who I am, this is who I serve, this is what I bring, and this is what I specifically believe I can bring to you. And you are always talking to one person at a time, like to you. Right? Jeff Bezos says your brand is what people say about you while you're not in the room. And you've got to think about who's going to be in that room. On the job search, who are those people in your target companies who are going to be making buying decisions? What would they say about you? First off, they probably don't know who the hell you are. I mean, at the beginning.
Right.
And so as you identify them and you know yourself, you know your strengths, you know what you bring, you know your value proposition, who you serve, and then you can connect into the pain points that people have. The pitfall is that people don't dive to that level. In business, we don't dive to that level. And in the job market, we don't dive to that level to say, who is my ICA, right? Ideal client avatar. In the entrepreneurial journey, we use that. We hear that from marketing. Well, I use that in my program, except it's not ICA, ideal client avatar. It's ideal contact advocate. The individual that can advocate for you. You've got to equip them by knowing yourself well, equip them with the words to sell you forward. And that's how you open up the job market. I mean, that's how you unleash the hidden job market, is you equip people to be able to identify you very, very well by first knowing yourself. And we always, job seekers, we like to skip that part. We like to jump straight to the resume, just do a little refresh on the last job I just had. Jump straight, and all of a sudden it's disconnected, it's discombobulated, And so that's the main hurdle.
And to add to that, I think a lot of people in the layoff, I know I was just affected, and there's a sense of like you lose a little bit of confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, now I'm one in the sea of people. How can I really stand out, right? Maybe I should be looking for just a job where I can take a pay cut and just get by. What would you say to somebody who's maybe in that position? How to maybe instill confidence, or like what should their approach be like to around the situation?
Well, first off, let's go back to Saturday Night Live from like the 90s, right? I'm a little bit older than you, but Stuart Smalley said, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. And the concept is like, you are a freaking badass in a specific area. We all are. We all have very unique strengths. One systems engineer is not the same as another systems engineer. One P&L owning operations director is not the same. The outcome might be similar, but the way in which you get there, the way in which you lead people, the way in which you engage people, the way in which whatever it is, your secret sauce, as one of my clients said the other day, your secret sauce, and when you go through the work of figuring out what that is, right? Strengths, your stories, your value proposition, and you're able to say, oh, that's who I am. Like, that's what I do. That's who I serve. That's who I impact. Like, holy cow, that absolutely changes the way you see yourself. Because now you're not asking for a favor. You're not. This is quid pro quo. You give me this, I'll give you this. And they're commensurate, they're even. So it enables you to go out and say, hey, what am I worth in the marketplace? And for that marketplace to say, this is your true value, because you have such clarity around your packaging. And you're not starting to undersell yourself, which is another pitfall. After about a month, after the person has gone through an initial crest in their job search, and it always happens, right? Because we throw out even some bad networking. And a few people are like, yeah, I'll talk to you. And there's an initial kind of bump. And then it falls. It crashes after that in almost every job search. And there's not that layer of that you're bringing up the floor with good, effective networking. And we start to undervalue ourselves. And all of a sudden, that director of engineering is saying, wait, I'll go back to systems engineering and I'll go from 160, but I really want 180, but I'll take 120 because I've been unemployed for a month and this could go on for the next 6.
Yeah.
And it's fear, and we start to undervalue ourselves. And it's, man, confidence comes from knowing who you are, who you serve, and what you do for them specifically, the pain points that you solve. That clarity will enable you to be propped up continuously.
I love it. And you mentioned bad networking. So what is the opposite to that? And I think to your point, I think people want to network, but there could be different personalities, just like discomfort, like not showing how to do it right, and just lack of confidence around that area. We use
Yeah.
confidence a lot. Do you have any tips to maybe help them do good networking?
Yeah. So I have a 5-question meeting worksheet that I walk students through it. The fourth and the fifth question, the first 3, you're building those questions based upon who you're having the conversation with. The fourth and the fifth question are, do you know somebody else I should connect with, right? You're creating this web. Webs have to connect or the spider falls through, like it has to connect. And so you have to ask too. Because when you're in front of somebody, about 1 out of 10 is going to offer up names without you asking. The other question is, what can I do to serve you? When you're coming from a true service mentality, and you could be, again, a single level contributor talking to a CEO, and you're sitting back saying, what in the world could I possibly do to serve this person? Hey, they took the meeting. They took the meeting for a reason. They saw something in there that was of value to them.
Right.
Innately, we all have that line of selfishness in us. We have to, or else we wouldn't get anything done. And so you've got to ask, what can I do to serve you? And you never know what they're going to bring up. And it might be actually very, very specific.
Yeah. And I think what I'm learning in my entrepreneurial journey is that we, again, underestimate the value we can bring. But sometimes, like, we all have a personal brand. Maybe it's also helping promote somebody else, right? Giving them honest feedback. There are things that are less technical, but more soft that most of us can add value that we can think about. But I know we talked a little bit about the job search side of things, but I want to pivot a little bit back toward the entrepreneurial side and kind of your quest on there. And we talked a little bit about like how you need to diversify as in your job skill set. Can you talk about like your views on like the job market and how you as an individual should diversify and why?
Okay, so I have a BA in finance and my bachelor's in finance, and I never became a stockbroker, but that's where I did my internship. The concept of diversification of finance is deep within me. Typically in a corporate world, we under diversify where we're getting our income from because we're working with one employer. They're paying for everything. They're paying for our bonus, our total compensation package. And there's almost diversification in your compensation package, but then it gets undiversified by you having it all come from one person. And so when you're thinking about your compensation from the perspective of where could I get pieces of this from to mitigate my risk? And if you look at your 401k, even though you might have a lot of it in stock and be a little bit lower on the diversification factor, depending upon how old you are, there is diversification in your finances from a stock perspective, from a 401k perspective. You got to think about the way you're bringing in daily income in the same way. And this is the way that the world is changing. The majority of people in the next couple of years are not going to be, even if they're working full time, that is not going to be their sole and only source of income. The creator economy is growing explosively. What is the creator economy? YouTubers, people who are creating courses. The majority of them have a full-time job, but they're getting a piece, they're creating collateral, they're taking knowledge and they're packaging it in a way that's consumable by others. And they're figuring out this game of how can I do something else? And it doesn't have to be that. It might be somebody who runs a food truck and sells elotes or something like that, because I'm on the Mexican border. Something like that on Saturdays. Yeah. But it's so important if you want to become bulletproof to this current economy where layoffs can happen like that, and they're happening via email. I mean, it is disgusting what's happening right now, the dehumanization that's happening right now, and how quickly these decisions are being made. It's not disgusting to everybody, but it's pretty disgusting to me. And you can only make yourself bulletproof to that if you have the capability and the fostering, right? The active fostering of your network, right? You're thinking about who you can serve and staying connected to people. And that's a skill set, right? There's process to that. And you're thinking about, if I lose this, where else am I able to turn a dial and start to receive income? So many more people, Anya, are thinking about consulting, but really kind of stepping into this work of being a fractional worker. you see it a lot of times in C-suite, like fractional CFO, fractional CHRO, fractional recruiter, fractional whatever. And it just means I might be working for 6 different companies, but they're each paying me a fourth of my income. Well, what does that yield? 150% of my normal income, right? 6/4, right? Right, my math. But you can also, in doing that, you can charge a premium as well.
Love that. And what would you say to somebody who's like, hey, that all sounds great, Ryan, but I have no clue who to start, you know? Like, I maybe, how am I going to compete? It seems like there's podcasts everywhere. Everybody's doing a blog. Like, the market is too saturated. Like, why even bother?
Okay. The first place to start is don't quit your job. That's the first place to start.
Love it.
Don't quit your job and go think that you're going to turn. It goes back to the easy button conversation we're having. Don't think that you're going to watch it. And there are a lot of people who are like, hey, I can get you earn an income next month or in 2 weeks. All you got to do is follow my YouTube strategy or my ad strategy or my blah, 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 whatever. Hey, it worked for them, maybe. They're probably leaving a lot of parts out, and the economy has changed since they accomplished it. And a lot of the loopholes got closed. So be really careful with that. I would say just whiteboard it. Like, how much time are you going to be investing here? You might actually find that when you're really playing to your strengths in your day job, what you're currently doing in 40 hours, you might be able to do in 30 hours with nothing changing in terms of the output that you're able to put out. But now all of a sudden you have a lunch period and from 4 to 5 or something like that in your day, and you're not changing how many hours you're working, but you have these time slots to think about, what is it going to be that I'm going to be growing? Where am I going to become visible to people? And that's the first component that I would do if I were trying to take the first step, is I would think, how do I want to become discoverable? Okay, well, what type of creating do I like to do? Do you like to write? Do you like to create videos? Do you like to ad-lib and talk? Is it audio? What is it? Okay, now where is, if that's the work I love, and it could be sustainable because it's not just taking all of my energy, then what platforms could I be doing that on? And don't try to be in all places. At this stage, at that stage, just pick a platform where you enjoy it. Not even where your end user is, but where you just enjoy it. And say, okay, I'm going to commit to some type of consistency in terms of creating content. That's the first step before even creating a product or anything like that, is picking a place to become found, to become known, and then contribute.
And I can see that building your confidence, right? You're learning, and you go from like, I have no idea, to like, oh, it's coming together little bit by little, things like that. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about investing in mentorship, and some of it did not work out, as you mentioned. But what were some maybe other learnings that you had along the way, some pitfalls or on your off-track journey that you want to share or advise people against or for?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, the thing that keeps on coming up is that easy button, because I tried at different points in my journey. There was a point where I thought that I was going to be able to flip the switch and turn on YouTube ads, as an example. And that was going to be the next secret sauce to help take me from here to here. Yeah. And there's not that initial representation of the 45 steps that are between the here and there. Yeah. And when you're thinking about who you want to work with, who you want to take advice from, I would think about, how do they work? Not just what is the result, but how would carrying out the activities that they're carrying out, does it match to your risk palette? Does it match to how you want to be seen and known in the world? Like, do you really connect with that person, with that process? That's one of the things, just as much as understanding the tactical steps, is, does it connect with the risk palette? It's not all about the destination. It's also about the journey to get there. And that would connect in with job seekers. Yes, you want to land a job at a FANG company as a director of engineering. Okay, that's great. But that's your end result that you're trying to drive to. How do you want that 3-month process, 3 to 6 month process? Like, how do you want all of the activities that you're carrying out in there to feel? Do you want to be having consistent conversations with hiring leaders? Or do you want to be just spamming your resume out? Yeah. Well, what's the difference in the feel? I would say what's the difference in the result as well, but I want you to think as well about what's the journey going to be looking like. And every day at the end of the day, when my wife, my husband says, "Hey, how did your day go?" At that dinner table, that conversation, what do you want that conversation to look like? Those are some of the things that I would be asking myself as I'm going through the journey. It's so often we hear from people who are in a place that we'd like to be in.
Right.
But truly understanding what they put in to get there, to get to that place where they're sitting in Tahiti and they're only working 15 hours a week and they're doing it all from a beach. Oh man, the 65-hour weeks that they put in, the 70-hour weeks, the blood, sweat, and tears, the people they fired, the bad decisions they made, the mentors that were wrong that they hired, and the processes that they followed, that stuff is all kind of conveniently left out.
Right.
I mean, you've got to have real conversations with each other. And in anything, yes, we can leverage our expertise. Yes, we can leverage processes and systems, but we also have to be willing to be transparent, to be honest, to be upfront, and to think about not only the destination, but also the journey along the way.
Absolutely. And one thing, so we talk about diversification and being necessary, but I think even for myself, before I started this, like, well, could I be an entrepreneur? Like, that seems like that's a title, like a very, like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, or you're like, oh, this really cool, sexy person.
Yeah.
But can anybody do it? Like, is it really somebody that's out there, that 1%, and they're just crazy building some tech, like, or is it something within us that everybody can start developing, right, to diversify a little bit? And it doesn't have to be this wild thing. It's really actually doable for most people.
Yeah, so I never thought of myself before becoming an entrepreneur. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but somebody described it to me in this way. An entrepreneur is somebody who sees a problem and they have a vision and say, I could solve that. And then they actually do. So it's the baseline is I'm able to see, I'm at least paying attention enough to be able to see in my area of expertise or in my area of desire and passion, there's something where there's a breakdown. I can fix that. But then there's also the action-based side. Okay, now I'm ready to actually do something about it. And I think that's the primary trigger that makes us start to be an entrepreneur. When we say, I'm going to try to fix that. When you look at your life, when you look at what you're doing, you may say, wait a second, I do that at work. Right? I see problems, I drive towards that problem, and I fix and I bring solutions and I bring process and I draw stakeholders in and I communicate and I help fix things. Yeah. In the corporate world, you are an entrepreneur. Yeah. And so then translating that back to what we do, you don't have to jump in the pool. Again, you don't have to dive head first into a 4-foot pool. Like you can dip your toe in and say, I'm going to stay employed, but I'm going to try to fix something. Right. And you don't have to start delivering it people in a paid way. You can start to deliver it through content. Mm-hmm. And you know, it doesn't have to be an all-in type of a jump. And that when I received that definition, it's somebody who sees that problem and tries to fix it. I was like, oh, I am an entrepreneur, and I always have been. Right? That was a big trigger for me. Can anybody do it? I don't know. I do believe that people should be playing to their strengths. Right. I really do. The activities that naturally fuel and engage us and help us feel strong, help us feel whole. I do believe that there might be people who it would be more in their weakness zone to do that fixing or to think of things in that way or to think systematically. I think that there are some people who are, I'm an executor and I like to stay in the lines. I don't like to build the lines. Yeah. I don't think everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, but it's not just 1%.
I love it. That's very much more an open concept. I think people come for see themselves in that.
It's a lower bar.
Yeah, in a good way. A lower
yeah,
bar way.
It is a lower bar because it's like my wife used to run hurdles in college. I could see the hurdle. Yeah. I can pace towards the hurdle. I can get over the hurdle. Yeah. Right? But it's like almost like it's a physical object. I can see, touch, and feel, and I can go over it. I think that's kind of what I mean by from a lower bar perspective. But not everybody can be a hurdler.
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'd love to dive into that just a little bit more. But I think one hesitation people have is they feel like the market is too saturated, or like, there's already somebody doing this. Like, how do you help people with mentality, or you yourself, like continue with your idea and not let yourself get sidetracked, or kind of let that mental chatter stop you from doing something?
So I do think that markets are saturated, but markets, job market, entrepreneurial markets, they are saturated, but a lot of it is they're saturated with just junk. And right now, because of ease of access to information, right? Because of AI, thank you, September of last year when we got, ChatGPT and OpenAI, like because of ease of access to information, it's easier to apply to things. It's easier to tell an AI tool, hey, take this job description, take my resume, match them up, here, submit. So saturation is present. It's also easier for recruiters to hit a button and send it to 15 job boards. So there's going to be more people on each of the applications, right? From that perspective. Okay, how do you get past saturation there? You be different. You know yourself better. You network. You go directly to hiring managers and you say, hey, here's how I can serve you. Here's why I'm coming to you, right? On the other side, from an entrepreneurial's perspective, you have to know who you serve, what you do, where you can bring value, and be willing to, lift up the curtain. And I don't mean lift up the curtain like show pictures of your kids and things like that. I'm not talking about that, but lift up the curtain on your expertise. Create processes, create blueprints, create things that people can follow, and then get that out there to the world in a way that they can see it and palate it. A hiring manager has to be able to see your personal brand and say, oh, that's what they could do for me. In marketing, a person has to be able to see your delivery and say, oh, that's what they could do for me. It's understandable, but it has to first be understood in our own minds for us to expect anybody else to understand it and receive it.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, Ryan, I so appreciate your wisdom. And again, Job Hacker Network is an amazing tool that experienced engineering and operation leaders should check out, because you can tell Ryan sees a problem, analyzes it, thinks about it through all angles, and who's the audience. He very much understands that and helps you get to where you want to be. So Ryan, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to share, or any last minute tips you want to share for off-trackers listening?
I mean, for me, as an individual who wants to serve my fellow man, I want people to be able to understand whether they fit in that criteria or that group of people that I can serve. So one of the unique aspects and areas of my value proposition to people is my having worked with ADP, having led a global career development teaching program to 60,000 people and helping people build their personal brand and move up in their career. If you're an engineering leader or an operations leader and you're looking to move up in your internal or external marketplace, then I do want you to check out my free trainings. And Anya, I'm sure that you'll link some of that stuff. I have one called Unleash Your Career in Engineering and Operations Leadership. And that would be the place to start with me, where I could start serving you.
And you have a free resource, maybe somebody who's maybe at different stages of their career. There's also a free resource to check out, right?
I do. And I have my website has many different free resources at jobhackersnetwork.com. And I'd love for people to connect with me on LinkedIn or also via my YouTube channel, which is at Job Search Network. Let me start that one over. You have to edit that one out.
No worries.
Or even on, or even on my YouTube channel, where you can connect with me. You can just look for Ryan Stoltzfus on YouTube or Job Hackers Network, and you'll find those resources. And so that's just full of resources to help an individual package themselves, pull out their stories, build their personal brand, network, get to hiring managers, and anything around the job search process.
Well, I learned so much, and I just hope that everybody else got some wisdom wherever you are in your professional journey. So Ryan, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for your wisdom again.
Anya, thank you. And I applaud the journey that you're going through and your desire to bring people in here on your podcast to learn from their journey for yourself. And as you're learning, you're teaching other individuals. And I think that's such a prudent, like the cycle. I think that's such a prudent way of approaching this we all have so much that we can learn from each other. It goes back to, we each have an area of just awesomeness, a strengths zone. And there could be more people trying to connect the dots and highlight people's strengths.
Yeah, let's lift each other up, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate your time today. I'm excited to share this with the world.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.